Dan and Amy talking before the news about Dem operatives in Chicago very desirous of Michelle Obama coming back to run for U.S. Senate if Dick Durbin were to run for governor in 18 or maybe even mayor in 2019. Sean from Elmwood Park tweeted because he's a multi-platform artist.
And he's got the best tweets ever. Sorry, Dan, but he's
well, it's one woman's opinion.
And my woman.
Yeah. My woman.
My woman.
Okay. You
Wow.
are your woman.
Wow.
Okay. It's sort of a twist on Helen Reddy, but okay.
Whew.
Good news about Michelle Obama running for Chicago mayor, Sean from Park tweets, is we get rid of the office booster seat and we don't have to take out the urinal.
Oh.
And of course, he's suggesting how enlightened Michelle Obama is because she supports gender-neutral bathrooms. Mm-hmm. That's obviously what he's referencing, isn't it? I had this idea for Scott Foval, one of the fixers on the James O'Keefe tapes, and Billy Bush, that celebrity suck-up who just got fired for hanging out with Donald Trump. And
he got wrongly fired.
And then Anthony Weiner and Ken Bone, Bone, Weiner, Bush, Foval, that they would...
No, I just like Bone, Weiner, Bush.
Yeah, well, the Real World remake, and if Donald Trump doesn't win the presidency, then they can all live in a house together. That's the first show that Trump TV buys. But now it turns out Weiner may be, the Weiner case may be before a grand jury before Election Day, so Anthony Weiner may be going away.
For what? Which?
Well, for
soliciting a minor sexually?
Yeah, well, yeah, and not to mention the...
I just wasn't sure if there's anything else.
all of the Anthony Weiner's crimes against humanity.
They taken that kid away yet?
Thinking about maybe he could be replaced by Bob Creamer, who's Calamity Jan's convicted felon husband, but he may be going to prison again too, and it seems like he wants to, and I understand why.
He got a little comfortable, got a little too sloppy there, didn't he?
No, I think he wants to go back to jail to get away from Calamity Jan. I think that makes sense. Speaking of calamities, Hillary Clinton's tenure at the State Department, and a quick note on the scandals that have been unearthed with the WikiLeaks emails. We got Clinton Foundation donors expecting benefits in return for gifts. Obama's cabinet being picked, influenced certainly by a Citigroup executive during the bailout a month before the election, former Citigroup exec Michael Froman. Clinton, of course, Hillary in her Wall Street speeches, where she was sidling up to all those Wall Street bankers, not chiding him as she suggested. Qatar, Islamic theocracy, giving Bill Clinton $1 million for his birthday. Clinton campaign in 2008, making the Obama-Muslim connect, wanting to use Obama's coke usage. So not really going high when they go low, as she suggested. And then discussing hiding emails from Obama, then deleting them, the private versus public position, and so on and so forth. And that's just in the WikiLeaks emails. We're not even getting to the FBI docs yet. And for more on this topic area, which will certainly come up in some form or fashion in tonight's debate, we're pleased to be joined by Ed Timperlake, who's a former congressional investigator who worked on cases involving the Clinton administration in the 90s, like that curious matter of laundering Chinese money into campaign coffers. He's also the author of the New York Times best-selling book, Year of the Rat. Ed, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
No, it's a real treat for me for another reason also. My wife is a proud graduate of the Circle.
Oh,
yeah, and Aquinas. So it's a treat to talk to your listeners.
Very good. Well, just a little bit of background on your investigation of the Clintons back 20 years ago and what that told you, what you learned about them and their operations that may be relevant 20 years later.
Well, it's very relevant. Thank you for putting me on again. I was assigned, I worked for Big Ed Lewinsky also when he was VA secretary.
Oh, sure.
I was assigned to do the investigation on the Chinese intelligence operation against the President Clinton's administration and the Russian mob. I had two portfolios. And quite frankly, we documented a lot of money in, the money in, and then the favors out. The favors out were published in a congressional report. Chairman Cox and Norm Dix ranking, both members voted out 9-0, 5 Republicans, 4 Democrats, and it told the reader all the military equipment that China had gotten, all the high technology stuff. Why is that pertinent today? because they went into the labs and got our stuff off the test benches and all our high-tech stuff, and now they fielded the most modern military in the Pacific Theater, which is directly threatening the children and the brothers, mothers, sisters of all your listeners that are in service over there. But it's worse than that, because all the stuff they got bounced to places like North Korea, who shares with Pakistan, who shares with Iran. So the bottom line is the case in the 90s resonates today. Now, why is that important? Because I've been around 20 years on this. Is that was chump change then. $50,000 to get in the White House from military intelligence in those days seemed like a lot of money. Today, they're talking in the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. So what is going to happen in the future that they've sold out on? What are the extortion points? What is the money in Iran going, $150 billion, going to flow back to take down Israel, to put rockets with nukes on it, threatening Europe, eventually reaching America? So the bottom line is the pattern and practice of Clinton, starting, by the way, in Arkansas, bouncing into the presidency, is alive and well today in WikiLeaks, and it's as current as everything you're talking about this morning. And that's the consequences then, now, and into the future that your listeners really should pay attention to, because it threatens our very national security.
Well, this is a bit of a pedestrian question, but are the Clintons good people, Hillary, Bill?
No.
And
no,
why,
they're not.
Why not?
And I know that for a fact. I've dealt with them. I actually flew down to Arkansas to have lunch with Bill Clinton. He was going to get the governors to vote him Veterans Governor of the Year. And a friend, Chad Colley, head of the DAV, he had one arm left. He was blown up pretty badly. And he was outraged. He was going to say, if that happened, Bill Clinton, who dodged the draft in a very ugly way, was going to try and take claim for being a veterans advocate. Chad was going to go to the governor's mansion and do a press report conference. Bill backed down on that one. The quote has always been, and I was neck deep with all the reporters when they were honest. The New York Times and Washington Post in the 90s followed this, was that Bill liked to hug people, and Hillary Clinton was the most greediest kind of politician they've seen in a long time. And I think the greed is really a driving factor in their relationship. Greed to power, power to greed, no accountability.
And
that's a simple formula.
And I got to say, turning to the FBI document released this week, and hearkening back to their investigation of Hillary Clinton at State, and the emails and the private server and all that matter. Boy, the juxtaposition of a 4-star Marine general, James Cartwright, pleading guilty this week to essentially violating the law with respect to classified information, confirming leaked classified information to reporters. Him pleading guilty with the prospect of 5 years in prison, he'll get significantly less. But still, while Hillary Clinton walks away from all that we now know, and we're continuing to learn with each release of documents, whether from WikiLeaks or from the FBI, and all of the seeming unrest within the Federal Bureau of Investigations about how Comey handled the investigation. Boy, you couldn't have a starker contrast. A decorated 4-star Marine general who is a former vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff pleading out the rule of law applies to him, but it doesn't seem to apply to Hillary Clinton.
You asked a fundamental question about are they good people. I know Hoss Cartwright. He married the widow of a classmate of mine who was killed in a tragic F-4 crash. I was an F-4 fighter pilot in the Marines Naval Academy. He married the widow and raised the family. He was a decent man in a time of horror when you're a young widow with kids, and Hoss Cartwright was in the squadron, and that's his wife today. So you talk about the decency of people versus the way they get out of it, and they bully and they control law enforcement all the way up through Arkansas to today. It's astonishing. We used to have Louis Freeh come into our office. I was a junior guy. Chairman Solomon of the Rules Committee could bring him in, and he was crushed because Janet Reno in those days was stepping on law enforcement. It looks like today the same thing has happened with the Attorney General and the Director of FBI. I know the FBI. I was assigned to work for the FBI for 5 years as the highest level counterintelligence individual from the Pentagon. They're great people. Those agents are wonderful. This is breaking my heart more than anything to watch the FBI have this problem at the top. I don't understand it.
Well, what do you make of James Comey not recommending charges?
I can't believe that. That is tragic. My grandfather, I'm being very personal here, but my grandfather was a career New York City police officer. And the worst thing in the world would be to be called a dirty cop. The FBI is called in to clean up police departments. So I believe it was Joseph DeGenova, a U.S. prosecutor, used that term. I would never want that term used with my name in law enforcement, and that's what he just said. It's his words, not mine. But that's the kind of resonation at the highest levels going out to the American people about the integrity of the FBI. It's an ugly time for America right now.
All right. He is Ed Timperlake, former congressional investigator and author of the New York Times bestseller, Year of the Rat. Ed, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
No, thanks for putting me on. I really appreciate it. And go Cubs.
All right. Thank you.
Ed.
Ed, I appreciate that. And Ed joined us on our Go Cubs Turnkey.pro answer line.